Embattled Taiwan People's Party chair Ko Wen-je says he's taking a 3-month break to reflect as corruption scandals engulf him and his party. Nvidia once again smashes earnings forecasts, but why are the chips giant's investors not celebrating? 2 Hong Kong media veterans are found guilty of sedition. We ask whether the city's free press is now a thing of the past under Beijing rule. Plus,
在你缺乏有限制的时候就去做，去突破那个限制。
Taiwan's filmmakers share their struggle to bring their art to the world. Hello and welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. The founder and chair of Taiwan's third largest political party, Ko Wen-je, is stepping aside temporarily after a string of scandals. He apologized for betraying the trust of supporters and says he will reflect on his actions. Louise Watt is following this story for us from Taipei. Louise, does this mean the end of Ko's career and his party?
Well, Leslie, since the scandals broke, there's been a feeling that this is the beginning of the end for the Taiwan People's Party. Ko has been trying to save the party that he built and shaped in his own image. This afternoon, he held a press conference at which he bowed in apology and announced that he would be taking a 3-month leave of absence as head of the party. He said that was to give the TPP time for a proper investigation and also for him to reflect on his actions and whether he could lead the party in the future. Now, Ko is one of the best-known politicians in Taiwan. He was Taipei mayor and he ran for president in January's elections. A 3-month leave of absence is not a long time and it's unlikely to signal the end of his political career. But there's no doubt that his party has been wounded by this. The TPP ran on a platform promising clean politics, and now they've been embroiled in allegations of corruption. Ko himself has admitted to using campaign funds to buy office space for his own personal use. But even before all of this broke, the TPP had been losing its political power, the kind of political power that propelled it to win enough seats in January's elections to hold the balance of power in the legislature. Since then, it's aligned itself with the main opposition party, the KMT, so that's caused it to lose a lot of its support. So can the TPP bounce back from all its troubles? It's got a lot of making up to do with its supporters.
Thank you for that, Louise. That was Louise Watt live for us from Taipei. Taiwan's opposition-controlled legislature is due to meet again next week after the summer break. Controversial reforms saw the last session end in brawls and mass protests. Now, activists say they're alarmed over yet more opposition proposals. Tiffany Wong reports.
拒绝民主倒退，
拒绝民主倒退，
公民持续守卫，
公民持续守卫，
中国国民党不要乱，
中国国民党不要乱。
Leaders of the Bluebird civil movement, which saw tens of thousands of protesters take to the streets earlier this year, are now sounding the alarm over 4 bills proposed by the opposition Kuomintang ahead of next week's new legislative session. They're concerned about a proposal to allow lawmakers to play a greater role in national security decision-making by getting an early preview of defense spending proposals. The KMT legislator who proposed the bill said it's meant to streamline national security coordination between branches of the government and is in keeping with how the U.S. handles its defense budget. Activists say they're also worried about a proposal to shorten the number of years it takes for Chinese spouses to receive identity cards from 6 to 4 years, citing what they say are conflicting loyalties. The KMT says the change is to provide Chinese spouses equal rights with other nationalities. The key concern among activists is that these new reforms could harm Taiwan's democratic processes and leave the country susceptible to Chinese influence.
这4个法案都是在威胁我国的民主的危机。那我们必须要有所行动。那如果说中国国民党 在下一个会期之一要通过这些法案的话，我们相信台湾公民一定会有所行动。
The Bluebird movement started earlier this year as a protest movement against proposed reforms by the opposition-controlled legislature, which would have given lawmakers greater oversight of the executive branch and President Liao. That bill passed in May, but is now suspended as it undergoes constitutional review. Although the movement has been less active in recent months, these civil society groups are here to show lawmakers that they will be paying close attention to the next legislative session and are ready to protest if needed. Howard Zhang and Tiffany Wong in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's stocks closed down on Thursday after U.S. chip giant Nvidia's quarterly earnings failed to live up to investor expectations. Taiwan's benchmark index, the TAIEX, was down by 0.75% by the end of trading. The electronics sector dropped nearly 1%. Nvidia has continued to beat forecasts, but following its second quarter earnings report, U.S. shares in the company dropped by almost 10%. For more on Nvidia's earnings, Joyce Zeng spoke to Olivier Blanchard, research director at tech advisory firm The Futurum Group.
Nvidia's earnings has a strong track record of surpassing these consensus estimates. How do these latest results square up in Nvidia's streak?
What's been interesting is a lot of investors seem to be punishing companies for doing really well, but not necessarily doing as well as they have in the past. And I find that interesting because, you know, if you take a step back, I'm looking at an NVIDIA's trajectory, at its momentum, at its pace, at the risks even it's taking. It's doing all the right things to remain competitive and hold on to its advantage, even though it doesn't really have to. It doesn't need to outperform itself by that much. And so when you're getting, you know, as we discovered today with the Q2 results, really good results that still exceed expectations. Yes, they haven't outperformed or beaten expectations quite as aggressively as they have in the past. I don't see that as a sign of weakness. I think the outlier was what we saw up until now. I think this is more normal. This is what we should expect moving forward.
Right now, customers who want to get in on the latest AI tech and have the gadgets to, you know, reach that level of computing, they still have to go to NVIDIA. But how soon do you expect to see meaningful competitors in this space?
So obviously, you know, there's one track here, it's just data center, and there's another track that's devices. And with devices, what we're seeing, first of all, NVIDIA is still, you know, definitely a place to go for that. AMD's GPUs are pretty solid as well, so they're definitely a vendor to look at. But I think the bigger structural change there with devices is that a lot of compute, and especially a lot of AI related or AI enabling compute, is happening on the NPU more so than the GPU. We're seeing the NPU take on a lot more of these tasks in mobile phones. We're seeing that with new AI PCs. So it's not to say the GPU isn't important, it still doesn't play a part in this, but it's just there's also an NPU piece of this that favors Qualcomm, for instance, more so than NVIDIA. So it's, you know, the silicon diversity that's driven by the AI proliferation from the cloud into devices is definitely making things more interesting and is going to be a competitive proof point for NVIDIA moving forward as they themselves start to diversify.
That was Olivier Blanchard, research director at tech advisory firm The Futurum Group. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has met with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing. Xi reportedly told Sullivan that his country was committed to maintaining good relations with the U.S. despite what he described as great changes. It comes at the end of Sullivan's three-day visit to China, his first as National Security Advisor. During his trip, he also met with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. The two discussed tensions in the Taiwan Strait and agreed to keep military-to-military communication channels open. China spent over $15 billion on military activity in the Western Pacific last year. That's according to the Reuters news agency, which cited internal research from Taiwan's armed forces. That figure accounts for 7% of China's 2023 defense budget. The research showed that Chinese ships sailed into the Western Pacific over 70,000 times last year. Around 40% of that activity was in the South China Sea, while around 15% took place in the Taiwan Strait. China has ramped up military operations around Taiwan since President Xi Jinping took office and has clashed with the Philippines and other countries in the contested South China Sea. Cabinet spokesperson Chen Sikai has been named Taiwan's next transportation minister. Premier Zhou Rongtai expressed confidence in Chen despite him having no prior experience in a ministerial portfolio. Chen previously served as President Xi Jinping's spokesperson during his presidential campaign. He takes on the role after the post was vacated by Li Mengyan following a scandal over an extramarital affair. 11 people are facing prosecution over corruption scandals involving 2 car park projects in the northern city of Keelung. A company wanting to redevelop these car parks bribed a city official to leak information about what the city was looking for in a tender. This unfair advantage helped them to win the bids. It's the latest in a wave of corruption prosecutions to come to light across Taiwan in the past few weeks, signaling a potential crackdown. Sundance Film Festival Asia returned to Taiwan this year, and the industry looked to the spectacle as it announced the winner of the country's short film competition. But local professionals say there are deep-rooted issues in local filmmaking that can't just be swept under the red carpet. Liao has the story.
Winner is 说家林仙女。
恭喜林导演。
Taiwanese director Lin Qianyu wins Jury Prize for Best Short Film at this year's Sundance Film Festival Asia. Her work, called Suojiang, follows the story of a locksmith who's lost his way in life. It's the second film that Lin has ever made, and for many young Taiwanese creatives like her, an international award like this could make or break their career.
As an independent filmmaker, 就是要想办法让自己除了在台湾被认同以外，也要让自己的可能 skills 或者是创作的风格在国外被看见。
Taiwan's government says it's working to address the problems caused by the country's limited market size. The head of the Taiwan Creative Content Agency, an investment office set up by Taiwan's Ministry of Culture, says he's ready to provide more funding for the film industry. But for director Wenje, who competed against Lin at Sundance, these opportunities fall short when the market's criteria for good film appear more and more narrow.
纵使补助很多，然后影展好像也很多，但每一个影展跟每一个补助的多元性并不是这么的高。也许对于作者意识或者是不同的方向去怎么样呈现一部短片的那种包容性还没有到这么的多元。
Taiwan's film industry is also infamous for its long working hours and delayed payments, especially for fresh graduates just entering the scene. Even for nationally acclaimed veterans, such as musician Lim Gyong, making a living can sometimes feel uncertain. Lim has been composing film scores for over 30 years and took home a soundtrack award at the Cannes Festival for the 2015 film The Assassin. He was on stage at Sundance Asia, sharing his experiences with industry professionals from around the world.
因为我从来不晓得我做完了之后，大部分的导演会给我多少钱，我都没有跟他们谈，也没有跟他们签约。然后做完之后好像没有钱，他们觉得要给我多少钱，我就给我多少钱。
These are structural issues that no amount of award trophies can fix. But films are still being made. And Shu, who directed last year's short film winner at Sundance Asia, is now getting ready to make his first feature-length movie. His latest short film, The Stag, also won another award at the Sundance Festival's main event in Utah this year. Bolstered by their win in the States, he and his team has returned to Taipei, back to a familiar set of challenges.
我会觉得第一个场面我很想要让它尽量简单跟纯粹，但是很明确自己要讲跟探讨的是什么，所以我会想要用一个很简单的方式看可以执行这个东西，但应该还是会申请一些政府的补助。
Ann's personal savings are going to run out by the end of this year. He says he'd rather work part-time jobs in unrelated industries to support himself, rather than give in to commercial pressures. And his crew feels the same way. they're focused on their creative process.
得了大奖以后，当然压力会更大，就是你会有一种好像下一步不能拍差那种压力。但我觉得就且战且走，主要是自己跟自己下一部作品之间的，你觉得自己有没有更成长？
Taiwan's film industry may not be able to change overnight. Still, composer Lim Gyong says Taiwan's imperfect environment should not stop future generations from making movies.
在你缺乏有限制的时候就去做，去突破那个限制，因为最终还是要表现你的作品嘛。
Whether or not Taiwanese film can break through to the international stage depends on the survival of its youngest filmmakers. And they're banking that as long as there is a desire to make films, audiences will keep wanting to enjoy them. Kama Xu, Patrick Chen, Sandy Chi, and Yuchen Lai for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break, Taiwan's Taekwondo Olympians are striving to rejuvenate the country's competitive edge. Stay tuned.
I'm a big fan of TaiwanPlus. I'm not just saying that because I'm getting interviews.
You're helping to change the way that Taiwan is seen internationally.
These stories being told is really vital.
I think you need TaiwanPlus because it tells the stories of Taiwan in a way that makes Taiwan lovable, charming, fierce, idiosyncratic.
There's an overwhelming feel of love for the country, love for the island, and it shines through in everything you do.
A deadly earthquake rocked Taiwan's east coast early on Wednesday.
At first, I thought it was just going to be a small normal tremor that Taiwan has all the time. But then around 30 seconds in, I realized this was going to be something different.
Hands on deck to get a city of 100,000.
A few, 30 minutes later, TaiwanPlus was able to release some information about the earthquake, which was very vital to us to know about what is happening. Also, give us a sense of assurance that everything is going to be okay.
I think one thing Taiwanese American would find really meaningful about TaiwanPlus especially is it portrays a changing Taiwan.
I've covered 7 general elections in the UK. My personal feeling is that I thought TaiwanPlus covered the aftermath of the election absolutely superbly, and it clearly told me what this means for the future.
You see that the progressive Taiwanese have moved way past between thinking of Taiwanese as something rooted in ethnicity or in some flat idea of culture.
And I'd love to see TaiwanPlus become one of the premier broadcasters in the Asian arena. I think that would be fantastic.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. A Hong Kong court has found 2 editors at the now-defunct pro-democracy newspaper Stand News guilty of sedition in a landmark case. Chung Pui-Kun and Patrick Lam could now face a sentence of up to 2 years in prison. The ruling comes nearly 3 years after the independent media outlet was raided and its top editors detained. To learn more about the case and what it means for press freedom in Hong Kong, our reporter Tiffany Wong spoke with Alexandra Bilakovska, advocacy manager at Reporters Without Borders.
A Hong Kong court has just ruled the 2 former top editors at Stand News guilty of sedition. What does this mean for the future of media in Hong Kong?
So this guilty verdict is coming after more than 3 years of continued delays. And for us, for Reporters Without Borders, it's just yet another proof of the deterioration of press freedom in Hong Kong, in the territory. It is the first time, and I want to emphasize this, in the history of modern Hong Kong, when the media outlet and its journalists are being prosecuted and found guilty for reporting on the facts that they've published in the course of 2 years. Includes hard news, includes opinion articles, but also interviews with exiled activists. So This is something that is very concerning, and it's just not a proof of what we've been witnessing for the past 4 years alone, that the press freedom has been falling apart in Hong Kong, and that the authorities are starting to do anything in their power to silence any independent voices, reporters in the territory itself.
Hong Kong has used other laws, including the national security law, to crack down on media in the past. What is the significance of using this sedition law?
What is interesting also to mention that actually when the Stand News was raided by 200 policemen at the time in December 2021, it was actually the National Security Police that was raiding the media outlet. They were the ones gathering evidence, and they were the ones basically trying to frame it in a way that is also breaching national security. Then the court went with charging them only with a sedition publication, conspiracy to publish and to disseminate the seditious publication in Hong Kong. So right now what the authorities in Hong Kong is doing, they're using any tools available right now to prosecute, to target those which are trying to go against the one narrative. For the future cases, it's giving a door, it's giving a new tools to threaten journalists with sedition, and it could be and is in a way the strict red line about what they can report on and what they cannot.
That was Alexandra Bielikovska of Reporters Without Borders speaking with reporter Tiffany Wong. Japan is issuing emergency warnings as Typhoon Shanshan sweeps up the country's southwest. More than 800,000 people on Kyushu Island and in the central Aichi and Shizuoka prefectures have been asked to evacuate. The storm is already lashing the country with 250 km/h winds. Shanshan will pass over Japan's southern islands as it moves towards Tokyo in the coming days. Heavy flooding has killed at least 15 people in western India. People are wading through waist-deep water in Gujarat state. Cars are almost completely submerged and homes flooded. At least 20,000 people have been evacuated. Locals say the waters rose suddenly, leaving them little time to grab their belongings. Dozens have been killed and millions forced from their homes in India and Bangladesh in recent days as relentless monsoon rains continue to hit the region. In recent years, Taekwondo has taken a backseat to other Olympic sports in Taiwan. But a group of dedicated coaches and young athletes are fighting to revive the country's competitive edge from foot to fist. Wesley Lewis has the story.
These high school athletes are training to become Taiwan's next generation of Taekwondo stars. They have been honing their skills under the watchful eye of national Taekwondo legend, Zheng Licheng. Zheng won Olympic bronze at the 2012 London Games. She's since settled down in rural Hualien in eastern Taiwan and has dedicated her time to coaching.
我是原住民啊，然后再来就是我家庭以前不太好，然后自己也有一个理念，就是说我未来也想要培养出像我这样的孩子，就是让他们有一个希望，就运动，然后去找到不一样的人生这样。
She tours schools around Hualien, training and mentoring young athletes. Among her pupils is 14-year-old Zheng Jiale. He has trained for 2.5 years, and like his coach says, Taekwondo has given him a chance to better his life.
因为奖金，想为家里补贴，因为家里的经济状况不好。
Most of Zheng's pupils come from disadvantaged backgrounds, meaning winning competitions could mean big things for their families. And Zheng says Taekwondo can offer even more for these kids.
因为他学了这个运动，我觉得让这些孩子打开眼界的时候，我觉得那个是很感动，让他知道他的人生是有希望，而不是只是这样。
In the 1980s and 1990s, Taiwanese athletes performed well in international Taekwondo championships. When Taekwondo became an Olympic sport in 2000, countries around the world began to invest more in training, creating more competition. In the 2020 Tokyo Games, Taiwan had 4 Taekwondo athletes, among them Luo Jialing, who won bronze in the women's under 57 kilogram category. But in this year's Paris Games, an injured Luo was Taiwan's only representative. Huang Yuren, who competed in the Tokyo Games, says Taiwan has talent, but aspiring professional Taekwondo athletes often lack the necessary funds and support.
他们没有这些经费，甚至说这些时间，甚至大家去看好这一块，所以说在积分的这个制度上， 我们还其实落后很多啦，就只有那几位指标性选手可以去抢积分，其他人都没办法。
The former head coach of Taiwan's national Taekwondo team says more support needs to be given to coaches to develop homegrown talent, and there should be a more flexible elimination system on the national team, allowing aspiring athletes more opportunities to vie for a spot.
譬如说，成人组的国手们表现得不好，那怎么样有一个替换机制，让国手们现在的国手们有一个警惕之外，那青少年端这边也有一个机会，是我可以取代正选的国手。
In recent years, Taiwan's National Sports Training Center has improved coach salaries and athlete allowances for the national Taekwondo team. But youth coaches say until there are enough resources for young athletes, Taiwan won't regain its competitive edge. For the time being, coaches like Zhang remain at the forefront of cultivating the next generation of Taiwan's Taekwondo talent. Chris Ma and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
The 2024 Paralympic Games have kicked off with a dazzling opening ceremony in Paris. Tens of thousands of spectators watched a parade of 168 teams as it made its way through the city center. This year, over 4,000 athletes with physical or intellectual impairments will compete in 22 sports over 11 days. 13 athletes from Taiwan competing under the name Chinese Taipei are among them. They'll be competing in sports such as table tennis, badminton, taekwondo, and powerlifting. Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News. You can visit the Taiwan Plus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we take you to Spain, where thousands of revelers hurl tomatoes at each other for the annual La Tomatina Food Fight Festival. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.